In this video, we're going to show you how to replace a lower control arm on your Chevy Silverado 2500. This is going to be located behind the front wheel. Let's get started. Using a 21mm socket, loosen all of the lugs for the center cap. Remove the center cap. Using a 22mm socket, remove all of the lug nuts. Remove the wheel. Remove the ABS connector. Lift up on the tab, pull straight back. Remove the connector. We have a plastic tab we have to open on the side of our strut tower. Get under the tab and remove it. Do the same thing on the plastic stay on top of the control arm. Open the clip. Remove the ABS harness from the bracket, pinch the clip, and pull it out. Using a 10mm socket, remove the bolt for the brake line bracket. We have one more 10mm for a brake line bracket. Using a 21mm socket, we're going to remove the two caliper bracket bolts. Remove both bolts. Be sure you have a hand on the caliper. There's nothing supporting it now. We're going to pull the caliper off of the rotor. And we're going to drag this forward towards the frame where we have a caliper hook. Hang the caliper from a hook and make sure there's no tension on the hose. Remove the rotor. Using a punch, we're going to remove the cap. Remove the cap. Using a 35mm socket, remove the axle nut. Remove the washer. Push on the axle, make sure it moves freely in the hub. If it doesn't move freely, take a punch and a hammer, tap it a few times until you're able to freely move it. Using a 21mm socket, remove the nut for the tie rod end. Using a hammer, we're going to hit the side of the knuckle and we're going to release the tie rod end from the knuckle. Make sure it's nice and loose inside of the knuckle and then leave the nut installed for now. Using an 18mm wrench, we're going to loosen the upper ball joint nut. Using a hammer, we're going to release the upper ball joint from the knuckle. Take a hammer, hit right here. Release that ball joint. Remove the nut for the upper ball joint. Remove the upper control arm. Using a 24mm socket, remove the nut for the lower ball joint. Thread the nut on, just a few threads. Remove the tie rod end nut and remove the tie rod end from the knuckle. Using a hammer, we're going to release the lower ball joint from the knuckle. We're going to tap right here. Release the ball joint, remove the nut, push the axle in with your thumb. Remove the knuckle. Using two 22mm, we're going to remove the nut for the shock. Install a jack under the lower control arm, and we're going to take up a bit of the play. This is going to help us take out our shock bolt. Using a hammer, tap the bolt through, and then use a punch to tap it through the hole. Using a locking wrench, we're going to hold the top while we use a 13mm socket to remove the bolt. Remove the bolt for the sway bar link. We're going to go down on our jack and remove it out from under the lower control arm. Now that we have the pressure taken off, we can remove our sway bar link parts. We are now under the middle of the car, right to the left of our transfer case. We're going to use a torsion bar unloading tool, and we're going to install that around. And there's a small little divot right here, and that's where our tool is going to get installed. There's a small cutout on top as well, where your tool will fit into. Now we're going to take all of the tension. Using an 18mm socket, we're going to remove the bolt. We can remove the lock. We're going to remove the tension off of our tool. Remove the tool. Using an 18 and a 23mm, we're going to remove the nut off of the bolt for the lower control arm. Now we're going to remove the bolt. Do this on the front and the back. Using a 15mm socket, we're going to remove all of the bolts for the axle. Using a pry bar, get in between the axle and the axle hub. We're going to remove the axle off of the hub. Push the control arm bolts through. Remove the washer off that backside. Don't forget the washer. Remove the two bolts, pry down. We're going to pop our control arm out. Using a large pry bar, pry down on the torsion bar and wiggle the control arm forward off of the torsion bar. You may need a second set of hands to help you. Using a wire brush, go ahead and clean the torsion bar end. We're going to wipe some copper never sees onto our torsion bar. Go all the way around. Install the control arm onto the torsion bar. When you do this, you want to make sure the key is flat in the rear. We're going to get the control arm installed up into place. If you need to, you can install a jack under the control arm and use that to help it up into place. Get the control arm lined up, and I'm going to use a punch. I'm going to put it through there. I'm going to remove the jack, and I'm going to bring this over to the front side to help me install. Once you get the control arm lined up, I'm going to use a second pick to hold it in place, and then remove my jack. With the control arm lined up, get the bolt installed. Make sure you're installing the right bolt. There are two different sizes. With the control arm bolts lined up, I'm going to install the bolt and tap it through. Moving to the front hole and install the bolt. Install the nuts onto the bolts. Do this on the front and rear. We're going to get a jack under our lower control arm. We're going to use this to pull it up, and we will install the shock. Install the bolt and get the nut started on the back side. Install the axle into place. Install a bit of blue thread locker to all of the bolts. Go around and get all of the bolts installed. Go around and snug down all of the bolts. Install the sway bar link. We're going to install our second bushing. Install the spacer. Install the bushing on top of that. And get the sway bar link installed into the sway bar. If you need to, you can use a jack under your sway bar to get a little bit more room to be able to install your sway bar link. If you had to use a jack to install your sway bar link, go ahead and remove it once it's installed. We're going to move our jack back under our lower control arm, and we're going to go up. This is going to push our sway bar bushing up and through and give us a little more threads up top. Install the top bushing and nut. Snug down the sway bar link. Remove the jack out from under the lower control arm. Install the knuckle. We're going to get it started with the axle, and then we'll hinge it down and put the lower ball joint into the knuckle. Get the splines lined up with the axle. Install the nut onto the lower ball joint. Push the knuckle back. Get the upper ball joint installed into it. Install the nut onto the bottom of the upper ball joint. Install the tie rod end into the knuckle. Install the nut. Snug the nut down. Be sure that the stud does not spin when you snug down the nut. Install the washer and install the axle nut. Snug the axle nut down. Using a pry bar, hold the hub still while using a torque wrench to torque the axle nut to 177 foot-pounds. Torque the tie rod end nut to 48 foot-pounds. We're going to make sure our sway bar link is nice and snug. You want these bushings squeezed but not pancaked. Torque the shock bolt to 59 foot-pounds. Using a jack, get under the knuckle where the hub meets the knuckle, and we're going to push up. And this is going to put pressure on our lower ball joint, and this should snug our stud down into the hole so we can come in and snug it down. Torque the lower control arm bolt to 107 foot-pounds. When you do this, be sure the stud is not spinning. Remove the jack. Snug down the upper ball joint nut. Be sure that the stud is not spinning while you're tightening this. Torque the upper ball joint to 37 foot-pounds. Torque the axle bolts to 58 foot-pounds. Go around and do this for all of them. We're going to install our torsion bar unloading tool. Install the block. When you remove your bolt from the torsion bar, it's going to have a nice rust line on it. We're going to use this rust line as our marking for where we're going to put it when we reinstall it. Reinstall the bolt. Snug the bolt down until that rust line. Right there. Remove your torsion bar unloading tool. Using a jack, get under your control arm, and we're going to jack up the suspension till it's at ride height. Ride height means where the car suspension will be sitting if it's on the ground. With our suspension at ride height, go ahead and torque the lower control arm bolts to 107 foot-pounds. Do the same thing on the front. Be sure you're holding the front of the bolt while torquing it. Be sure it doesn't twist. Remove the jack, install the rotor. We're going to grab our caliper and remove our hook. Pull it up over, get it installed around the rotor. Get the caliper bolt started. Snug the bolts down. Torque the caliper bracket bolts to 220 foot-pounds. Install the axle nut cap and tap it into place. You can hear that tone change. Install the brake line bracket up over the upper control arm and get the bolt started. Travel down, and we have one more bolt for our brake line bracket. Snug down the bolts. Pull the ABS harness up and over, install it into the bracket. Install the harness into the plastic stay and close the door. Lock it into place. Do the same thing on the side of the strut tower. Install the ABS harness. Push until you hear a click. If you don't, give it a pull. Make sure that's locked in. If you can, install this into the back. Ours is rotted out, so it won't stay. Install the wheel. Get all of the lug nuts started. Snug down all the lug nuts. Torque the wheels to 140 foot-pounds in a star pattern. Install the center cap. After completing this repair, you will need to bring your car to the local alignment shop for an alignment.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.